Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the podcast daily. And if this is your first time, on Tuesday, we jump into questions that we have for Ohio State head coach Ryan Day and the other assistants that appear in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center later today at noon. That's Bill Landis, and I'm Austin Ward. I write mine on ohiostate.rivals.com, my 5 questions every week. I do them on Monday, and then I give Bill his turn as he gets his mind right for a media day festivity in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Bill, what is on your mind?
There are a lot of things on my mind. Probably a few things that are similar to what's on your mind. I will. I'll let you have the defensive line stuff. I'm gonna stay away from that. I'm gonna tee that one up for you and let you ask that question.
Great.
But I am also thinking of it and wondering what's going on there. But I'm also thinking about the offensive line, and it's hard, like, to, I guess, to give people a little bit of an idea of sort of how these things work. It's like I think we could go in there and be like, "Hey, Ryan, are you going to bench Matt Jones?" It's not going to get a tremendous answer. And I think the goal of this is like try to glean a little bit of information. So I'm trying to think of maybe the right way to phrase a question about Matt Jones and about Enoch Vimahi and about the guard play at the moment, because it's not been good over the last 3 weeks. I think part of that is due to injury, as we've said multiple times, particularly with Matthew Jones. I don't know if that's the case with Donovan Jackson, but I don't think he's played very well either. I don't think Ohio State is in a position where it can just swap out both of its starting guards in the 10th game of the season, nor do I think they should be doing that. But I do think they need to give a guy like Enoch Vimahi a little bit of a look, and maybe a guy like Matthew Jones a little bit of a rest. So that is front of mind for me as I try to process all the things that are happening with the running game. And it's not just one thing, which makes it more frustrating. It seems like every week there's something new to think about when it comes to their inefficiencies. But right now, I think the focus is probably on those guard positions and what, if anything, Ohio State can do there to help shore that up a little bit.
Yeah, I think more than anything, the question is, how much do you think, Ryan Day, that the foot injury is impacting Matthew Jones? Like, and if the answer is not much, then that begs a different question from there.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is enough, then you have to wonder maybe why we haven't seen more of Enoch Vimahi, at least last week. I thought that was where it was trending, and it certainly looked like after the early holding penalty that they were willing to give that a try. Now it turned out to be more related to the shoe than the penalty, but some of the issues that we've seen there at right guard continued after that. And what's the threshold here? I know that they must feel like Matthew Jones at whatever percent is still ahead of Enoch Vimahi, and they have a lot more information throughout the week than we do. But there is an element of see it in a game and prove it, because a lot of the results on Saturday are not matching up.
Yeah, so someone asked me on the message board over at ohiostate.rivals.com on Monday, I guess, who I think the best 5 offensive linemen are. And my answer is the 5 that they're currently playing. I guess basically because I don't have any other information to say otherwise. But that doesn't mean that there's not the possibility that playing someone new could help them there, or even um, a game off or half a game off for a guy like Matthew Jones could help him be fresher for the games where they're really going to need to be at their best. So I don't even think it's a conversation about like outright benching Matthew Jones, because there have been good moments too. Like, I know the bad plays tend to stick out the most. I understand that completely, but there were some things in that game too in the Northwestern game that I thought he did well. There was a run where he and G. Scott kind of pulled to lead Mayan Williams and executed their blocks really well, and a safety came flying down from the 3rd level and took out Mayan Williams. Like, that guy just made a heck of a play. But Matthew Jones, excuse me, did his job pretty well on that play. And there are others too. It's not like down to down he's a liability, but they're just they're not consistently good enough at those 2 positions, I think, at the moment. And I don't know what it is. I'm sure injury is part of it, but it's just like can't keep continuing business as usual, because they've got to be able to convert in those short yardage situations in particular. I think when the money is down, you got to keep a drive alive. They're just not very good at that right now, and it's not only Matthew Jones's fault, but I think a large part of it is a lack of push from the 2 guard spots.
Yeah, and I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago or so that Justin Fry was part of the Tuesday festivities in the meeting room, and I asked him about Matthew Jones and the foot and the shoe and all that. He said really like, well, nobody's going to be really healthy if you play offensive line in the Big Ten.
Hmm.
And I think the sense is just from that conversation and several others that I've had that the foot is probably not going to get any better or any worse. Um, he's going to have to deal with it for the rest of the year. So, like, I get if they think, well, a week off is probably not going to help him. It also like doesn't hurt. And if you think that at some point, anything else could happen on the interior of the offensive line for Ohio State, going to have Enoch Famahi ready to go. And he's done well,
Hmm.
I think, in the few opportunities had off the bench. But um, I'm just curious what that would look like for an extended period of time. And uh, I thought Saturday would be a good example of a game where they could get that work. Didn't turn out that way. I think they probably got a little freaked out, justifiably, by the weather. Same reason that they didn't want to try other stuff at running back, which
Hmm.
may or may not be one of the questions that you have. But, you know, and I think they're like, well, let's just get through this with the guys that we know can perform, and then we'll worry about everything else later. At least, I mean, I would think that there's a chance that that's the way that they approached it, and we'll find out later on today.
I think that's probably part of the thought there. I mean, I would say that probably was what happened at running back. Perhaps that's what happened at cornerback with Jordan Hancock not playing at all in that game. Maybe like a slick surface in weird conditions. You don't want to put a guy out there who's been dealing with hamstring issues, which on some level I would understand. I guess it's not so much about the Northwestern game. It's about moving forward and making sure you're as sure as you need to be across the board. And frankly, Matthew Jones just doesn't look particularly comfortable. And the bad plays that stick out are one thing, but if you watch him even in between plays when he's like walking back to the huddle and stuff, he just seems to be limping a little bit and um, quite uncomfortable. And I give him credit for playing through it, especially at that position. But at a certain point, I think you need to ask yourself like what's best for him and what's best for the operation of the offense. And I'm not so sure that putting him out there on every single play is good for either at the moment. So we'll see what they say. I'm not really on alert for anything to change there because I think if it would have, maybe we would have seen a sign of that already. But they have 2 games here to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, and I can't. I'm just thinking about doing anything wearing one shoe that's like 2 sizes too big. Like,
Yeah.
uh, it's it's kind of crazy that that's what's happening there, but it is. And again, it's not to pick on Matthew Jones. I think that the injury more than anything else is what's impacting him. But if that's not going away, then contingency plans need to be considered. So we'll see what we can gather there from the offensive brain trust for Ohio State. What else is on your mind, Bill?
I think this kind of goes with that, and it's Ohio State has been very bad on third down the last 3 weeks. It's not only short yardage situations, but it's all kind of tied together. And I'd like to get Ryan Day's perspective on what's not connecting there. I think he'll probably say it's a lot of things. They're obviously not running the ball terribly well on first and second down, which sets up long third downs. Their average yard to gain against Northwestern was over 6 yards. Against Penn State, it was over 8 yards. Against Iowa, it was a little better, but there were still some long ones in there. And I was looking up some stats on CJ Stroud on third down, and he last year and this year is a very good third down thrower, and was a very good fourth down thrower last year too. And he's not really been relied upon a whole lot lately. Like in third and one, third and less than 2 to go, or 2 and fewer to go. The last 3 games, they've had 10 instances of that, and they've run the ball every time. They've only converted 3 of them, which is a pretty bad conversion rate. But the idea of not using CJ at all there, I think is interesting. I and just want to talk with Ryan Day maybe a little bit about the process of or decision making of trying to line up and just run for that first down, throwing in third and short when it's more often than not a running situation, because it's not efficient. And 11 to 40 over the last 3 games, they still won. But when you're operating at that percentage over an extended period of time, I think eventually that comes back to bite you against a team that's able to convert on the other end and possess the ball and perhaps even score at a better rate than Northwestern was. So they went from one of the better third down teams in the country, arguably the best, to now looking like one of the worst over the last 3 weeks. And that is obviously not a good place for them to be in.
Yeah, I've just wondered a few times in the last couple of weeks, and I talked about it maybe more extensively after Penn State. If Ryan Day has gone to such great lengths and overboard, perhaps even to stress this toughness and the need to get short yardage conversions that it's compromising the things that Ohio State does best. Now, it hasn't cost them any games. Obviously the third down conversion rate is not where they would want ideally, and that's keeping them from, being the most explosive offense in the country, but still very good. Um, I think about the plays like 4th and 1s and throwing to Chris Olave, uh, the things that early on in his career, you're like, "Whoa, Ryan Day's got some Boudin balls there that he's going to." He wants to throw on 3rd and 4th and short, and he's not afraid to take those shots down the field. Not just even conservative high percentage throws. He is willing to take his shots in one-on-one with very good receivers and a very good quarterback. He We're not seeing that a lot this year, and I think I know the reason for it, which is that he wants to make sure that if he has to get 3rd and 1 against a really good defense, he can run for it. But Clemson had a really good defense, and the way that he chose to exploit them was by using an NFL quarterback and an NFL wide receiver, and I don't have any problem with that. I know the intention. I just think maybe and North, you have to throw Saturday out. You couldn't have done that. That would have been ludicrous to try to take a play action shot
Mhm.
on 4th and 1. You set that aside, but I just think there's probably an element of this. Your best as a pass first offense at Ohio State right now. That's what they're built to do. And you can't, as you said, if it's 10 out of 10 and they're all runs and you're not taking advantage of the fact that you have a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback and Marvin Harrison and Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming out there to throw to down the field, that seems like a waste of talent and a waste of time.
Yeah, it does, and it also kind of then relegates that collection of talent to having to convert really difficult 3rd and long plays. There's been a few like 3rd and 14s and 3rd and 11s the last couple of weeks, which is obviously hard for anybody to convert, but to try to do so regularly is nearly impossible. And that's like any quarterback. I don't think this is a criticism of CJ Stroud because I think it's hard areas to be efficient in. He's like the deeper that conversion yardage gets, the more he struggles. And he has 11 pass attempts at 3rd or 7 or greater this year, and I want to say all 11 are in the last 3 weeks. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that is the case or close to it, which just speaks to their inefficiencies now. But I think there is also too. You do have to work out some stuff during games. Like you obviously you practice, but you can't really know about it until you get into a game. So I don't necessarily think it's wrong to try to line up and like say, hey, let's go see if we can go get a 3rd and 1 running the ball. But I think that we have enough evidence to this point that it's just not the strong suit of this group. And there's nothing wrong with throwing for it. Like, I mean, go 10 for 10 throwing the ball on 3rd and 1. I don't care. If you convert it, you convert it. I don't care how it happens.
Right.
But there's a lack of efficiency right now that's a little troubling in those situations.
Yeah, and probably 3rd and 1 running stretch to the boundary is probably not the ideal choice either. But
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
all right, so there's that. What other questions would you like to have answered on Tuesday?
We kind of touched on them already, so I don't know if we need to belabor them. Like, what's going on with the other running backs?
Mhm.
Chip Trayanum and Dallin Hayden, who did not get in the game against Northwestern. We don't know what the status of Travion Henderson is, so I guess that goes kind of hand in hand with this. Like, where is he at? When might he return? If he is unavailable, or if you're looking for more help there, like how much do you trust Chip Trayanum and Dallin Hayden to carry the ball for you? And I guess that's a different ask in a game where you're up by 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns as opposed to a game like last week where you're up by 1 touchdown or it's tied and it's raining sideways. Like, I get not wanting to put those guys in the game in that situation, but I don't think they want to find themselves in a position where they start running Mayan Williams into the ground here leading up to the Michigan game.
Yeah, he's got to be fresh, and I'm surprised by I was surprised in real time, and I said before the game, like, there's no way with Mayan coming off of an injury and given how much the running game is going to be relied on, I thought there's no way that he will get every tailback rushing attempt. And turns out that was the case. And I understand in hindsight why, because Chip Trayanum has spent until the last 3 weeks, the entire year playing defense and learning that system and building his body to play linebacker and not running back. And so if you don't have that body of work for Ohio State to lean on to call on them, and you're trailing in the first half and then still playing a one possession game or a tie game on the road, you're probably not really inclined to be like, yeah, well, now it's time to see if Chip Trayanum can do this. That wasn't the ideal moment. And if the ball is getting a little slick and Northwestern is able to key specifically on the running game, and you worry about Dallin Hayden's ball security as a true freshman, like, well, that's not the opportunity to prove it either, because the stakes are much higher. And being right about those concerns, and they may be wrong, there's a reason that it keeps being brought up that, hey, Dallin Hayden's going to get touches. We got to make sure that we protect the football. The reason that's being brought up is not just plucked out of thin air.
Right.
You have to do it consistently in practice first before you're going to ever take the ball on a Big Ten road game in those conditions and get it. So, like, in hindsight, it made more sense, especially with Travion out. I wonder what the right amount of jet sweeps and CJ Stroud keeping it, what the balance is for that, because I think there's a clear difference in effectiveness and efficiency once you add that other dynamic to the Ohio State offense. And it helps Mayan Williams or Travion Henderson down the road when you have that stuff going on. I think that has to be part of the plan here.
I think it does too, but I don't know how good I feel about that actually happening. Like, I'm trying to remember 2018 Maryland when Dwayne ran the ball a little bit, and Urban Meyer made his comment about Dwayne dropping his pads and dropping something else after he ran the ball against Maryland in that game. And then I think he might have come out the next week against Michigan, like ran on the first play or something like that, which is like, okay, like, this is a part of the deal. They're going to use this to keep teams honest now. Do you feel like we're in that same position now with CJ, like just keeping it once in every game moving forward to keep teams honest?
I think it'll help even just that they showed it against Northwestern. Like, if you're Indiana this week, that has to be part of your scouting report. This happened last week. Look at what happened here when CJ kept on 4th and 1 and how far out the gate he got. I think there's an element that can carry over for at least the next 2 weeks. Like, once you get to November 26th, you're probably going to have to actually do it.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to give CJ the benefit of the doubt in that game. They're going to try and make sure that whether that's Mayan or Travion, that they aren't the ones winning that game in there. They're going to probably force CJ to take some hits and to move the chains with his legs. So that's the balance. He's not going to have to do it against Indiana. Not going to have to do it against Maryland in all likelihood. So do you want to, just because you've seen it work and you want to make sure that there's maybe a little bit rhythm and confidence that CJ's making the right read? Because a lot of these times, if we're being honest, like, they aren't zone reads. Like, CJ is not being told to keep any of those. They're all handoffs. So why doesn't he just keep it once and go around the corner? Well, they're telling him not to.
Yeah.
They broke the glass in case of emergency on Saturday. Like, you need to make an actual read here on 4th and 1, and you need to, if you have to go. Do what you need to do to win the football game. And to CJ Stroud's credit, he did that. He's not opposed to it. This is more of an Ohio State philosophy to protect their quarterback, who's one of the most gifted passers in the country, to win a national championship, and to beat Michigan, to win the Big Ten, and then to compete for a national championship with him on the field. I totally get that. So I know it's frustrating to watch that, and, like, you're playing, a non-conference opponent in September. Why don't they just take the free yards? Well, because they don't need it to win that game. They had to do it on Saturday. And that's where I don't know how Ryan Day answered it when I asked him on Saturday night. And he's going to be talking about it again later today. But, like, do you feel like it's necessary every single week, even if you're going to win the game, just to have that as part of the arsenal? And my gut tells me he's going to say no.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's I think that's probably the right answer. I don't want CJ Stroud running it just to run it in games where he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
But I think there's a balance there between being able to pull out when you need it to, and also making sure he's comfortable when that time comes. And I think they're building something there. He's scrambled a little more the last couple of weeks. There were times earlier in the year where he would scramble, and I think to myself, like, he still looks uncomfortable when he gets into the open field. I feel like he's looked more and more comfortable the last few weeks when he's had to scramble on those plays, or certainly when he got out and ran the ball against Northwestern. So as long as he's ready and willing to do it when you absolutely need it. I think that's really all that matters. So it was good to see them do it when they did need it against Northwestern, but I don't think they need to do it again, or at least maybe for their sake, I hope they don't have to do it again against Indiana and Maryland over the next 2 weeks. But I think there's enough there now that you have to respect it a little bit, and maybe even that in and of itself can loosen some things up in the run game. Combined with what you were talking about, the jet sweep stuffs with the stuff with Emeka Ibuka, I think is really good. I like that far more than I like throwing a bubble screen out to the sideline and asking guys to block out there. And I actually think there's something too. I think Emeka might be even a little more comfortable getting those jet sweeps than he is catching those bubble screens as well. So I was glad to see that come back into the repertoire this week too.
They're just so much easier to
Yeah,
get to the edge. I mean, it's hard. They consider those that extension of the rushing game, but that's not easy. First, you have to execute the snap. CJ's very good at getting the laces and getting the football out accurately and quickly, but that's far more challenging than just taking a snap and handing it off,
yeah,
obviously, or even doing the pop pass. And when you add in the element when they're throwing those bubbles out there, that's a relatively easier play for the defense to diagnose in my mind. I mean,
I think
I'll
so
let
too.
I'll let the X's and O's people tell me if how wrong I am about this, but if you're running jet sweep or jet action and you're in the pistol with Mayan or Travion having the ability, you don't know which way it's going to go. I've seen Wisconsin have so much success with just such a basic running play where it's almost like you're having to deal with an option attack because you have multiple keys and there's different color going different direction. Like it just seems like a much more effective way to get to the edge to me than a bubble screen. But I am not a football coach.
Nor am I, but we have seen Ohio State be successful using that stuff in the past. I remember we were talking about the KJ Hill play
Yeah.
not that long ago. Where that's like free money every time where you motion that guy into the backfield, motion him back out, and then just flip the ball to him. Like there's a lot they can do with these weapons. I suspect that there is stuff in the bag that we have not seen yet that is being saved for November 26th, which may be um, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that's a coping mechanism, but I also think it's true. And I think we'll see some of that more in a couple weeks, but it certainly looks like something that can help them in the immediate as well.
Yeah, I don't think that they wanted to go into Northwestern in the first week of November and be like, you know what, we're going to need 6 carries out of CJ Stroud. Like,
Yeah.
no way was that the plan. Even if they're okay, you know, running him when they need to, I don't think they thought that would happen until the end of the season. So,
No, they did some play action pass stuff that they've not done all year either, which I can't imagine they were thinking they'd have to do in that game. But you do what you have to do to win. You certainly can't lose that game. So when you find yourself in that situation, you do what you do to win the game, and they won it. So I don't know. I get part of me just wants to like flush that game and like forget about it because it
yeah,
was so ugly. But there are definitely things to learn there.
agreed. They're 9-0 in a couple hours at noon in the team room in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Bill Burm and I will be there for Ryan Day and a couple coaches to talk and update the Buckeyes as they get ready for Saturday at noon against Indiana. We'll have snap judgments after that later on Tuesday afternoon. And the college football playoff rankings will be released later on Tuesday night. Got to assume Ohio State's going to stay at number 2. If they won't, 3 seems like the worst case scenario, depending on if
Mhm.
people want to get wild and start stirring the pot for November 26th early. That's probably going to happen anyway. It's unavoidable. We are not planning anything on Tuesday night to react to it live, but if it gets wild, maybe that will be back on the podcast daily later on this week, as it was last week. But that is the plan for Tuesday coverage for Ohio State. .rivals.com and the podcast. This has been the Daily. We appreciate you joining us as always. That's Bill. I'm Austin. We'll see you later.